The first game of the NFL postseason features a rematch between the Panthers and the Rams. It's Locked On Panthers. It's Locked On Rams on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Rams podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can hear Carolina Panthers and Los Angeles Rams every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one podcast network, sports podcast network here in America and, of course, across the world. Thanks for watching this show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, which is presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in the lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Panthers, it's Rams to open up the playoffs, 4:30 Eastern Time, 1:30 Pacific Time. Julian Council joined by Travis Rodgers of Locked On Rams. Travis, I got to talk to Doug back in week 13. Happy to talk to you here in week one of the playoffs, which has been a while since Carolina's been in it. But of course, the Rams are very used to being at this stage of the season.
Yeah, it's funny when they were getting ready to go into Charlotte to play them a few weeks ago. I think that the Rams were hoping to skip this weekend altogether. They were kind of in a position to control their own fate going into the last chunk of the season. And had they taken care of their business, they would be home. Instead, Seattle's at home, and the Rams are playing a wild card game to a team that already beat them once this year. So it changes fast in this league, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And also, had the Lions' proposal to have just the seeding be based off of record, had that gone on, it'd actually be LA as the 2 seed and Carolina as their 7 seed. So no matter what, where we were going to get this matchup here this weekend. But yeah, you're right, because I was pretty high on LA at that point in time. I felt like the Rams are very clearly the best team in the NFL. And then they lose to the Panthers, who have very much been up and down team and really are limping into the playoffs. But since then, it's been a weird season for them. Obviously, the biggest story is that both these teams are in the playoffs. But how's the mood there in LA heading into this game, knowing that I'm thinking there's probably a finite amount of time they feel like they have with Matthew Stafford in trying to go after yet another Lombardi trophy?
Yeah, I think the mood could probably be best described as cautious optimism. Going into Carolina the first time, I think that most Rams fans thought how you felt, Julian, which is we have the best team. We have a quarterback that's playing at a high level. You've got weapons like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Kyren Williams. You've got a defense that's got a megastar in Jared Verse. They're able to get after the quarterback. And really the only question for the Rams at that point was whether or not they're going to have their special teams unit kind of get, not good, because it's still not good, but not terrible. And that's kind of what the last piece of the puzzle was. Lose to Carolina. You have a brutal loss against Seattle on Thursday Night Football that goes into overtime. You blew a 16-point lead well into the fourth quarter. Yeah. And then the Atlanta thing happens on Monday Night Football. And I think that's when Rams fans started to ask themselves, what are they good? What happened to this? And then the Arizona game last week in week 18 was a weird game too. For about 2.5 quarters, they did not look like a very good football team. And then like that, it changed. It's like, oh, there it is right there. And so Arizona stinks. So I don't know if it was more that Arizona was a bad team and finally just kind of fell apart at the right time, or whether the Rams finally got fully invested. I cannot wait to see this game, because I don't know what they're going to look like. I'm optimistic that they will be locked in. I think they kind of lost their way a little bit starting in Carolina. I think they took their foot off the gas a little bit. But they certainly don't have the luxury of kind of trying to figure this out all of a sudden. They got to come out and look sharp, because on the road in the playoffs is never easy.
Yeah, and I felt like I knew who that team was, who the Rams were up until that game happened. And certainly the turnovers, which we'll talk about week 13, were a huge factor in that game. It's not like the Rams had any trouble moving the ball up and down the field. It just came down to Matthew Stafford, who set the record for consecutive touchdown passes without an interception, started throwing interceptions in that game, and it completely flipped it upside on its head. And that led to obviously that loss that Sunday. And look, the Panthers honestly owe the Rams, because had they not lost to Atlanta last Monday night, then we're really not having this conversation, because that brought in to play the 3-way 8-9 tie, which Carolina was able to win because their head-to-head record against the Falcons, who they swept, and the Bucs, who they split with. Had LA won that game, and the Panthers, of course, losing on Saturday, they missed the playoffs. So hopefully Carolina can repay the Rams by beating them yet again. We'll see how that plays out. But I know the feeling here is just that, hey, you're in the dance. You're 0-0 at this point in time. What happened the first 17 games, 18 weeks of the season no longer matters. Can you go out yet again and take advantage of an opponent who you beat back in week 13 when Vegas didn't think you had a chance? And looking at the spread right now at 10.5 points, Vegas also does not buy into you winning this game. And obviously it's a big game for Bryce Young. They gave up so much to go out there and get him. They trade away Christian McCaffrey. They trade away DJ Moore when they moved up to Chicago to get the number 1 overall pick. And these are the moments where a quarterback has to step up and really carry his team. Matthew Stafford's going to be asked to be the catalyst in this game for the LA. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of other players you're going to have to step up. But Josh Allen, they're going to ask him to carry them. Trevor Lawrence, all these quarterbacks at this stage in the game are going to be asked to be the guy that leads them. And can Bryce Young do this? I don't want to use every game as a referendum. I told people that last week, but games like against Tampa, those are the games that you got him to win. These are the games on Saturday in the playoffs that you went up there to get Bryce Young to go out there and win and to play at a high level and give you an opportunity. And we'll see if he's able to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's one of the things, and you touched on it a second ago, that the Rams have been very fortunate to have over the last 5 years or so, which is there aren't questions about your quarterback. You got the right guy, right? You have a guy that will likely end up in the Hall of Fame. You have a guy that might win an MVP this year, and you have a guy that you've seen execute at a high level at the most important moments when he won a Super Bowl a few years ago. So the question of do you have the right guy at quarterback for the Rams at least is, yeah, you do. I was struck, kind of speaking about Bryce Young, I don't watch a ton of Carolina Panthers football, and I certainly don't watch them from, the beginning of a game to the end of the game unless they're playing the Rams. And when I saw him a few weeks ago, I'd seen highlights, I'd seen bits, Monday night or Thursday night or whenever they would show up, you see little bits here and there. And I was always kind of like, yeah, Bryce Young, okay. I know he struggled a little bit. And I watched him play against the Rams. I'm like, that guy's really good. What am I missing? They benched this guy for why? And then you watch on Saturday night last weekend against the Bucs. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. So I think it's interesting just where these two teams are with their quarterbacks. Obviously, Stafford's been around for a million years. I think you put your finger on it well. That I do think he will be back a year from now, but I don't know what happens after that. We've kind of been on a year-to-year thing with him over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but coming off the way that he's played this year, I mean, if I were him, I'd certainly want to keep playing, and certainly the money available to top flight quarterbacks is hard to walk away from.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this, we all know that every year you get a different team. You're going to lose 60% of that locker room. You're going to have the Puka Nacuas, Matthew Stafford's going to be around, Jared Verse, those type of guys, but then you're going to have to cycle in and figure out who could help elevate that team. And knowing how it ended for them last year, where they were down the field in the snow in Philadelphia, looked like they were going to win that game. And that could have been the difference between them losing and winning a Super Bowl. And now you sit here, and I do think the Rams are at least in the best path to get back to the Super Bowl, because you're playing against a Panthers team, granted, that you lost to before, but you're going on the road and playing against Carolina, opposed to had they not played their starters and kind of just punted the game and ended up having San Francisco as the 5 seed and them as the 6 seed. You're talking about going to Philly. Or you could have been talking about going to Chicago, which I think would have been obviously far more favorable than playing in Philadelphia. And if the seeds hold, aside from this game, then the Rams get to go play against Seattle. And who's played Sam Darnold better than this Rams defense?
Yeah, nobody. They've turned Darnold. Darnold had a great not even a great fourth quarter. He had a great half of a fourth quarter and a great overtime about a month ago, and he was really good. But other than that, they've had a pretty good run against Darnold. I think you're right. I think that we've talked a lot about this. My everydayers from Locked On Rams, this will be familiar to them, that if you weren't going to be the number 1 seed, I think the number 5 was actually the best spot to be in, because you get the NFC South, and you're going to get a team that is kind of, like you mentioned, kind of limping into the postseason at this point. Even though the matchup didn't go the Rams' way last time, the Rams have had zero luck against the Eagles. Like you mentioned, last year they came within close, they didn't get it done. They had a weird loss to them this year. They got blown out by them during the regular season last year. The Rams don't typically play well in cold weather. So Charlotte, I know it's not supposed to be great weather, but it's going to be better than Philly. It's going to be better than Chicago. So I think that's an advantage there. And I think there's a real chance, I don't know if I bet a ton on it, but I think there's a chance that all 3 road teams in this opening round win their game. And so there's not a crazy scenario that exists where the Rams are home for the divisional round playing against a team like San Francisco, or, and all of a sudden stuff starts to break a certain way. The Packers got to go to Seattle. The Rams get San Francisco back at home. So as far as the path goes, if you're not going to be the number 1, I think this is the best place to be. I agree with that.
Yeah, that is possible, because Green Bay, I look at playoff experience as mattering. Chicago really doesn't have it. Green Bay obviously has been there the last couple of years with that team that has been young, but it's matured. And then, look, San Francisco, they lost Tatum Bethune. If they can find a way to just get over the hump, then it could set up nicely. But Carolina's looking for an upset. And these guys, you don't know what you don't know. There's plenty of guys who actually have been with the Rams, who have a Super Bowl ring in that locker room. Austin Corbett told me when I asked him the other day just about last time you were in the dance, it was with LA. You had won a Super Bowl. And he talked about how you get to permanently etch your name in the history of this game when you win a Lombardi trophy. And there's a lot of guys who are getting a first taste of this postseason who want to be able to get another upset win against the Rams here on Saturday. And you talk about matchups. Did not go the Rams' way last time. It did go the Panthers' way. Let's talk about some of those matchups here in just a moment on this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Rams. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. The wildcard round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack load of multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boost make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks and apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Back here on this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Rams. Julian Council, Travis Rodgers of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Rams, respectively. Rematch of Week 13, where the Panthers upset the Rams 31-28 here in Uptown Charlotte. And the weather likely to be pretty similar. It's going to be rainy, and apparently there's an off chance of there being thunderstorms and potential lightning delay, which in January in North Carolina, it doesn't really happen, but Brad Panovich, one of the local weathermen, was saying that could happen. Hopefully that's not the case, but it will be another rainy day, a little bit warmer than the game back in November, and that should potentially maybe muddy things up potentially for this game on Saturday. We'll see how it plays out, but looking at these matchups, what's something that stands out to you that could give the Rams the advantage or potentially cost them on Saturday up here in Carolina?
Pressure on Matthew Stafford. I think that the big thing that you look at is whether or not Kevin Dotson is going to be available to play. Kevin Dotson has had a great season for the Rams. He's missed the last couple of weeks. He got hurt in that Seattle game. He's got a bum ankle. So I don't no official word on whether he's going to go or not. The people that I've talked to in and around the Rams that have been really good as far as kind of giving me an idea of whether a guy's going to go or not. Even they're saying it's 50-50, that they're really not sure whether or not he's going to play. Justin Dedek, who has played in his stead, has been okay. And that might be the ceiling of what it's been. And then you've got Steve Avila on the other side, who is one of my favorite Rams. I think he's absolutely a terrific guy, but he can be struggling. And when that pressure comes from the middle of that line against the Rams, that's when Stafford is at his least best. Now, he's been around for such a long time. He can certainly account for some of this stuff. But I think that is a big deal, because if he has time, you mentioned it a second ago, the reason that the Rams left Charlotte with a loss last time was because Matthew Stafford had a bad day. He threw 2 interceptions. One of them was a pick 6. He fumbled the ball when they were lining up or on a third down play, getting ready to kick what was at least a potentially game-tying field goal. Yeah. And he made 3 really bad plays at inopportune times. One of those things goes another way. One of those 4th down plays that the Panthers were able to connect on goes a different way. So I don't think a lot of stuff has to change differently. They just have to play pretty cleanly. But the one thing that does scare me is pressure in the middle. The Rams have, I think the Panthers have a pretty good run defense. So will they be able to run the ball? Was Devontae Adams fully healthy? A lot of this stuff comes down to it. But if Stafford has time and he doesn't have to really get rid of the ball in a hurry, I think he's going to have a really big day.
Yeah, and the Panthers' run defense has been much improved. After a season ago, they gave up over 3,000 yards on the ground, in large part because Derrick Brown wasn't out there. And Derrick Brown has been back all season long, did not get the Pro Bowl nod, and he's pretty upset about that. And here is a game to go out there and show why you are one of the best defensive tackles in the game, especially if Kevin Dotson's not out there. And we go back to week 13. Derrick Brown got his big mitt on that ball. That led to the interception in the first half there from Nick Scott. And then at the end of the game, he got the strip sack that was picked up by DJ Wanham. So Derrick Brown, I think, had probably his best game, is a marquee game as a Panther against the Rams back then, and he will obviously be a big key. And I'm glad you brought up just the Dotson piece, but also Matthew Stafford. I am so curious to see how this Panthers team is able to defend Matthew. When talking to guys in the locker room throughout the week, they haven't really said too much about what they can carry over from that last game to this one, understanding that you can't really game plan to get 3 turnovers again. Turnovers a lot of time can be luck. Yes, you can scheme up and make things happen. Getting pressure is a big part of that. But you go back to that game in week 13, I mean, their havoc rate, looking at tackles for loss, sacks, turnovers, all that was only 13.7%. That was the 5th lowest the Panthers have had so far this season. As far as getting pressure at Matthew Stafford, they pressured him 4 times. And that was on 13.3% of his dropbacks. That's the 2nd lowest amount that they've had this season. So they really didn't bother him. And when they blitzed him, he was pretty good. 7 of 9, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns. So the thing is,
funny you say that, Julian. I love it when people blitz Matthew Stafford. That's great. But please do it more. Do it on every play, because it's just one of those guys that there's nothing you're going to throw at him that he hasn't seen before. So wherever it's coming from, he knows where it's not there anymore. And I love when teams that blitz him. And I've always, the teams with high blitz rates it's those guys that can get pressure with just 4 guys that are really terrifying. Those are the teams that seem to give him the toughest issues.
And that's not Carolina. I mean, they're dead last in pressure percentage this season. And that, of course, that's not changing as the regular season's over. And they're going to be probably dead last in the playoffs. Now, if they can find a way to get home with 4, which I have a hard time believing is going to happen, then that could be something. But I really think in particular, as you mentioned with Dotson maybe not playing, up the middle, if Derrick Brown can impact this game, even Ashawn Robinson, I mean, Turk Wharton should be back in there as well. Like, that could be game-changing. And you look back at it, I mean, the Rams, I think they had like 8 true drives in that game in week 13. 5 of them, did not end up in a turnover. They had 4 touchdowns at the punt, and there's the pick 6, there was the interception, there's the fumble late in that game. They had no problem moving the ball up and down the field. They averaged 7.4 yards per play, which is pretty doggone good in the NFL, especially. So I'm just curious. They can't blitz him because they already know they got beat on that, and he scored 2 touchdowns off. So how are you going to mix up your coverages, and what kind of impact do guys like J.C. Horn, who did not play in that game back in week 13, have? Well, how about Trevon Merrick, who was suspended in that game back in week 13? Christian Roseboom, who's going to wear the green dot on Saturday, was with the Rams last year. What kind of impact does he have? And there's a lot of guys like Nick Scott, like Ashawn Robinson, like Christian Roseboom, who are coming from, at least have spent time in LA, how does their familiarity with Sean McVay's offense potentially factor into this game? So that's certainly something I'm looking forward to watching, as you mentioned, the Matthew Stafford aspect, and of course Dotson as well.
Yeah, the thing that scares me too is I don't worry about the Rams being able to score. Even in the games that they have lost lately, it has not been because they can't put points on the board. It's because they can't prevent points from happening, or the offense has put them in some weird positions. And one of the games they won late in the season against Detroit, they won 42-35. Like, even in games they were winning, they were giving up a lot of points. And it's the weakest part of this Rams roster, other than the kicker, is their secondary. And people have had a lot of Jacoby Brissett last week. The guy's been around forever. He's a backup, but he had a little bit of time on the plays he had time. He found guys, and there are guys that are open. So you kind of look at what they've done in the back end, whether it's Emmanuel Forbes, whether it's Akilla Witherspoon, and Darius Williams hasn't been playing a lot lately, that they're vulnerable back there. So if Bryce Young can have a day and match scores, if they can run the ball and give Bryce Young a little bit of time, that's what scares me a little bit, because you can move the ball on them in the back end. I don't think this game is going to be a 13-10 situation.
No.
And the Rams are on the wrong side of it. The way the Rams are going to lose this game is if it's 38-35. That's how they could lose a game like this. If it's a low-scoring game or kind of played in the mid low 20s, I think that favors the Rams a great deal. But if it gets into up and down, that's when the Rams scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game just like Week 13, where Carolina's got to score 30 if they want to beat LA. I just don't see how they're going to stop them, even when they add some of these pieces. And Nick Scorton, who's been a really good player from the rookie out of A&M, their second-round draft pick, he told us on Wednesday that while, yes, they won the game and the defense was obviously good enough to win the game with the turnovers, that he didn't really feel like they played to their standard. As, again, they gave up a ton of yardage, and then the only stops they really got were the turnovers. And again, you can't necessarily buy into those happening. So I am curious, like with Bryce too, because you look at offensive for Carolina, they have not been balanced really throughout the year. There's a couple of games, the Dallas game, this one in particular, which I think was their best offensive showing of the season, considering who the opponent was. They ran the ball well. They have not ran the ball well since then. You look at also Bryce in that game, there's 2 fourth downs where it's like a 4th and 2, 4th and 3. He's going for it all to Jalen Coker. He's going for it all to Tedero McMillan. And that kind of exposes that Rams secondary you were just talking about.
Yeah, I'm going by memory here, Julian. I know one of them was on Emmanuel Forbes, and they the Cardinals came out last weekend, and they were just like, they'd break the huddle and look around. Where is he? Oh, he's over there. Okay, we're going over there. They were just hunting that guy play after play after play. And he settled down a little bit as it got a little bit later, but he is worrisome. Akilla Witherspoon is worrisome. So like you mentioned, that Dowdle and Hubbard really kind of had big days against the Rams, Hubbard in particular. So, but the 2 fourth down plays were the ones that went, what in the world is going on out there? It wasn't just that they were conversions, but they were big plays, scoring plays. So, 3 turnovers, 2 big 4th down conversions. It does feel like that was an unusual set of circumstances, rather than you got your butt kicked on a Sunday afternoon. So I think most Rams fans are fairly optimistic coming into this one.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm for Carolina, and it was the worst kind of storm for the Rams in that game. And we'll see how it looks like on Saturday, where we may have another storm here in Uptown Charlotte. Let's talk about some of the keys to victory for both these teams here in just a moment on this Locked On Panthers, Locked On Rams edition of this Locked On Crossover Thursday. Hey guys, the draft picks positions are set, and so many teams are looking for their franchise quarterback. Every wish to ever become a pro quarterback and get drafted first overall by the Panthers or by the Rams. Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a #1 draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is a #1 quarterback career mode game on the mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. Sign contracts, train, and upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and evolve your teammates. Give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise to the ranks to become a pro football legend. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimateqb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in the App Store. And we've got something special just for you. Use the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend, QB1, It's your legacy. All right, Travis, back here on the show, looking at this game on Saturday again. Carolina gets that big win, week 13. They were big underdogs then. They're big underdogs now. And you would think they'd feel a little bit disrespected. Maybe they do internally. They're not letting us know that they do. A lot of these guys are like, yeah, Nick Scott said it. That's the gambling, the lines. That's for the fans. That's for the media. That's for we don't care about all that. We're going to go out there and do what we got to do. What do the Rams got to do to prevent yet another letdown? And I think would probably be maybe one of the worst losses of the McVay. And I don't want to take anything away from Carolina,
you're
obviously,
right.
But I feel like probably one of the worst losses of the McVay era if they lose this game.
I don't think there'd be any question. I think because it's a playoff game and yeah, I get it. You're on the road and you'd always rather be at home. But this is a game that if the Rams play, I don't even want to say play well or just play good, they should win this game. They have more talent. They have more experience. They have the pieces that you should be allowed. But, quite frankly, that doesn't always matter. It doesn't always translate like that. We saw it a few weeks ago. I think one of the things for me, I mentioned Kevin Dotson a minute ago. I think that's a big deal. Does Devontae Adams, what does he look like? It's going to be the first time he's played in about a month. We haven't seen him. The Rams are a very different team when he plays. Now, they were still able to score points when he wasn't there. Puka just went bananas. He was just fantastic. He's something else. I knew he was good, but man, he's way better than I thought he was.
That the one-handed catch that he had against Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson had a great game with the pick six, but that catch, I was sitting up there in the press box like, how in the world can that dude make that play?
Yeah, he's something else. So, if those guys perform near expectation, I think it's really good. I mentioned this briefly. I think that the Rams, it's funny. The Rams finished the season 12-5, and you don't have to squint to think about the Rams kind of running the table. Their 5 losses all came down to a couple of plays. They didn't get hammered once all year long. Philadelphia had a couple of block kicks. San Francisco, they got stuffed on 4th and 1 from the 11-yard line going for it in overtime. They lost to Carolina. We've talked about, obviously, with the weird plays that happened there. Seattle had to get 3 2-point conversions and one of them in overtime and the weirdest 2-point, like a bunch of weird stuff. Atlanta, even though Stafford had his worst game of the season, the Rams had a chance to win that game at the end. That one was a weird one. So the Rams have been in every single game where they've played well, but the one thing they haven't had to do is make a special teams play under pressure and have it go their way. They had a chance to win in Seattle, and Harrison Mevis, he's been really good. They canned Josh Carty a few weeks ago, and they put Mevis in there, and Mevis has made every kick he's tried except for the one that had some pressure.
And mattered.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things until I see you make one where it matters if you make it or miss it. Making a field goal in the first quarter when it's 10-7. Okay, there's a lot of game left, but make it and we win, miss it, we lose. Well, he missed that one. So the deeper in the game it gets, the closer it is, the more pressure obviously that gets put on Mevis' shoulders. So I think the Rams need to get a lead. I think they need to put the ball in Stafford's hands and keep their offense on the field as long as possible. I think those are the keys for the Rams to come home and get a chance to play in the second round.
Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker, was actually here a couple of years ago in camp, and it's interesting to hear that. Because you're right. The one kick he had to make with pressure, he missed. And back at Mizzou, he was known for making kicks in those pressure spots. Remember, he hit like a 56-yard or something crazy against Kansas State in one of those walk-off wins. And they had a couple other ones against South Carolina as well. So, yeah, we'll see if the thicker kicker can have a pseudo-revenge game. Not really. On Saturday, if they call him to go out there. For Carolina, they're going to have to finish drives. This is not going to be a game where you can just settle for field goals. Dave Canales showed his aggressiveness. And he's talked about, depending upon the opponent, like against the Packers early in the year and, of course, against the Rams last time, they went for it. And they went for it all on those 4th down and shorts to Coker and to McMillan scoring some touchdowns. So they're going to have to finish off these drives. The Rams are 7th in the red zone. Carolina's 24th. So Carolina's got to just play for 4 downs, try to get 6 points, and extra point on the board there to win this game. It's going to have to probably be 30+ for them to win. They're going to have to find a way to run the ball. They went from being the number 3 rushing offense, just total yardage-wise in the first 9 weeks of the season, to the last 9 weeks of the season being 30th. I don't know what's happened, whether it's
Yeah.
just been the offensive line that's been, there's guys been banged up, there's been shuffling around, but they have not been a complete disaster. They've got to find a way to start moving furniture, putting a hat on a hat, and allowing Rico and Chuba, who I'm sure they're all dealing with something, but you've got to find a way to have success here. And the last time they did run the ball well to both of those guys was in this game in week 13. And we've seen with the Rams, they struggled against Seattle. They certainly struggled against Atlanta, stop the run. That would be a path for Carolina. You don't want to put everything on your quarterback, also knowing it's going to be adverse conditions with the rain. And in number three, turnovers. That was the story of the game last time, and it potentially could be the story of the game again. Good or bad for Carolina. The Panthers were able to not turn the ball over at all. They've had problems doing that at certain points of time, like on Saturday night game against Tampa, where the weather was also bad. Now, the hope is that Dave Canales is not going to be calling a flea flicker from the 20-yard line with the running back who, by the way, I was in there, and I just asked Rico, because he had trouble with his footing on Saturday in that game against Tampa. And I asked, all right, with the cleats, what kind of cleats do you wear in the rain on field turf and in grass? And he mentioned the changes. And he also mentioned that he went out there in his regular cleats in Tampa Bay. I don't know how that equipment how that happens.
Yeah.
But hopefully they'll wear the right equipment as well. So let's put that as a key to victory as well for Carolina. But turnovers, like the slipping on the whole flea flicker call, that cannot happen. Interceptions for Bryce Young cannot happen if the Panthers want to win this game. So really, if they can just be 0-0 in the turnover margin, that would be totally fine for Carolina. Anything other than that, whether it's on the negative side or the plus side, could be to their demise or to their glory on Saturday afternoon/evening here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of the same thing for the Rams. If the Rams, either get a draw or a win in the turnover department, I have a hard time envisioning the Rams, taking it away a couple of times and losing. I just doesn't really add up. I think that the way that they're going to get in trouble is almost exactly the way they got in trouble in week 13, is that Matthew, and he's had a great season. I'm cautiously optimistic that he is going to win the MVP. I think he deserves to win the MVP, but the last month of the season was the least prolific he had been throughout the course of the season. He was much better on Sunday, I should say, against Arizona. But again, it's Arizona. It's week 18. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there. So we'll see whether or not they got it all squared away. I do know that Sean McVay, I am a leading disciple in the church of Sean McVay and getting his guys ready to play in big moments. So I don't think that there's going to be any of this, we got it sort of situation. I think they're going to come out real sharp, real focused. And I expect them to play very well.
Of course, MVP voting is already in after the regular season's over. Here in Charlotte, I know, speaking for myself, I'm hoping that Drake May, Charlotte native, is able to win the MVP. And we'll see if the Panthers can show why Drake May is deserving over the MVP over Matthew Stafford, if they can cause him to have yet another bad day. That's going to wrap up. Do you have, I'm assuming you're going to save tomorrow for your pick. No picks right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, that's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Rams with Julian Council, Locked On Panthers, Travis Rodgers, one of the hosts of Locked On Rams. Again, y'all check us out here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And tune in tomorrow to Locked On Rams with Travis and Doug McCann. We'll give you guys a final breakdown of this game on Saturday. And here on Locked On Panthers, we got a special guest, Jonathan Stewart. Chase 2 is going to join me as we get ready for this game on Saturday. All that and more coming up on Friday on Locked On Panthers and on Locked On Rams.